literally going to push stream just a second ago, only to have a toddler come running in, so that was really exciting. And let me get that out of the way right there. She was very upset that she couldn't be on the live show, and I don't feel like she needs to be on YouTube at, almost 3. And to get that out of the way right there, I've got signal. All right, I think that means we are ready to go. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome back to another Monday morning Tech Chat show on Labor Day. Already seeing some folks jump into the live chat. Renato, TG, Elias, Alex Morgan. Woohoo! Yeah, you guys don't have work? I'm going to keep working for y'all, man. I'm working it. Yeah, it's Labor Day in the United States. If you're in the USA, I hope you have the day off. I hope you're doing something really fun. I hope you're doing something really cool. If you're a working schlub like me, then I hope you're not overly taxed. You're getting some good work done. Chad Dixon, Aditya Anil, Kyle Ruggles, Pradeep, Mary P, Samawa, Ganzi Tech Nerd, TGTG, show us your techs. Okay. Folks, before we jump into the live show, before we actually get into like stories and housekeeping and all that stuff, I need your help because I'm terrible at streaming. I don't know how any of this stuff works. When I look at my monitor, I see a mirror image of my office. So, if I pull up my shirt here, do you guys see ED209? Is it correct or is it mirror image? I can't wrap my brain around what the differences are, and most of my recent streams have been so cropped on my shoulders that I can't tell what direction my shirt is heading. So hit the live chat, just let me know if I need to reverse this or if I need to fix. It's reversed. It is the mirror image. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna fix this right now. I've been streaming like this for months and no one said anything, so now I feel like a dork. So that's correct now, right? This is fixed. I'm real good at the interneting, guys. I'm real good. Hadi Tamini, Ronald Collins, Sivanazan, excellent. Whew, okay, let's get into some housekeeping. Thank you for the corrective action on fixing my stream. This is hilarious. Okay, turn it inside out. Kyle Ruggles wants me to do a striptease for the Monday Morning Tech Chat show. I see where you're at, Kyle's. You can be my Huckleberry. All right, so a couple quick bits of housekeeping. I want to get this queued up here. Okay, so I've had a really fun run of audio gear to review. Most recently, I spent some time detailing the Razer headphone dongle. So we're going to talk about that here in just a sec. Coming up, I'm going to be spending some quality time with the Sound Blaster X, the new G6 Sound Blaster X. Tiny little, well, not tiny, it's a little chunky, but considering it's a really high-end USB audio interface. So it built around gaming with all kinds of really cool gaming tech for audio and a monster amp. This is one of the loudest things I've ever reviewed. Really fun slate. And then also so I'm now in mirror image. If you look like right there, you can kind of see it way out of focus. Those are the Audira A01 Bluetooth headphones. And that review is going to be going up. It's actually already live if you're on Patreon. But that review is going to go public this evening, sometime in there. I had some issues with the video. I had to re-encode, re-upload, and then, of course, that means I had to wait an extra day to see if Google was going to demonetize me. I've been really aggressive again about demonetizing videos, especially like the podcasts, where they will be demonetized before I'm even done streaming. So, I did detail the headphone dongle, the Razer headphone dongle. I wanted to talk about this just a little bit. The whole situation kind of stemming from a lot of conversations I was having about audio quality, how to improve audio quality on smartphones. And I kind of took it for granted, like, the Razer phone has been out for almost a year now. Came out, it was officially launched. Like, I think you could buy it November of last year. and in my brain, that kind of meant to me like, well, this thing has got to be talked to death. Anyone who was going to do a video about it has to have finished every single minutia examination of what comes in the box with the Razer phone. No one talked about the actual dongle. Like, you can go and buy the dongle, and the dongle is a USB audio device that you can use on pretty much anything. And I couldn't find, before I started shooting the video, I couldn't find any real discussion or analysis of what it could do. Everyone just said, yeah, it's 24-bit and THX. And this kind of kicked off when I was doing my P20 Pro versus LG G7 video with TK Bay, where he was like, yeah, Razer dongle, it's awesome, I love it, it's great. So I did some homework. I tried to find any conversation, any examination on that, and I came up dry. So I was like, I guess I could talk about this thing even though it's almost a year old. And this is what's so frustrating about being an audio fan, talking about 2018 smartphones, is like any conversation about actual quality is basically ignored. That most tech reviewers kind of just look at, well, they said it's like, 32-bit, so it's probably pretty good. And then you actually listen to it, and it's absolutely terrible. So I did a review. I'm not gonna spoil the review, but yeah, I did a review, and you can check that out. And a couple folks were kind enough to post the review to Reddit, where, of course, everyone on our Android is an expert in everything. And so there were some pretty funny, snarky comments there. And on Reddit, someone did find, they did a deep dive on XDA. And so there were a couple people who were doing hardcore signal and electrical, some voltage measurements off of all of the various dongles that have been coming out. So that kind of helped add to the discussion. It didn't change my conclusion on the Razer dongle, but it was interesting to see from like a really hardcore, geeky, sciencey standpoint, some of the things that I was witnessing in terms of trends actually being confirmed, and then also some other things that I didn't know about some other dongles, which I'm going to probably be covering in just a bit. I'm seeing some people complaining that my audio is a bit out of sync. It's been a constant problem with Google Hangouts. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. I'm in sync on my side, so if the audio's off, we can thank Google for yet again not improving any kind of live streaming. And as soon as Skype rolls some kind of call recording update, I might just start doing all my podcasts off of Skype. So, moving right along. Oh, but one of the things I wanted to bring up about Reddit. So I posted the Razer headphone dongle to our headphone discussion, and I shouldn't have been surprised, but the main tone, the main replies coming from our headphones was, well, who cares if one product is more expensive than another and they have the same performance? And it just reminded me, like, never read the comments. Never engage on an enthusiast site like that. I want your honest opinion here. People in the live chat, I want you to be real with me right now. If you had two products, product A, product B, and they performed almost exactly the same, but product A was twice as expensive as product B, would you care? Would you care that one product is twice as expensive as another? Now, that could happen at $5 to $10. That could happen at $20 to $10. That could happen at $1,000 to $500. Does the price tier change your opinion if one product and another product perform almost identical? I'm seeing TCB says yes, TG says yes, Marty White says yes. Of course. Someone says nope. So Mary P says nope. Mary P likes wasting money. Ruari says I'd go for product C just to be an awkward bastard. Chad Dixon, yes, I want value for my money. So my argument was, it doesn't matter what price tier, like if it's a low cost price segment or a high cost price segment, people should know that they could potentially save money with one product, or that they're potentially overbuying with another product. That was my argument. So someone decides that I'm wrong and that it's no big deal. And he goes through what's hilarious. If you find this thread, the Razer review is on our headphones. If you find this thread, you'll find a conversation with me and a gentleman where I'm being kind of silly, but I'm being kind of silly to kind of point out how ridiculous his stance is, that he doesn't care about price performance at any tier, that it doesn't matter. And it especially doesn't matter if we're only talking about $10 to $20. And I keep just pointing out price performance matters while being kind of silly. And then he keeps coming back with just different tactics. And he eventually ends with, oh, you're being so classless, like a personal attack. Like he literally runs out of I'm dumb arguments to make and then ends up with, you're a meanie. This is hilarious. From P, hey Juan, I like your videos. Hey P, I like your comments. For Chad Dixon, are you going to talk about the Galaxy Note 9 audio performance in this broadcast? I am not. This podcast, I'm going to front load a little FCC and net neutrality chat, because we've got some good news and some really obnoxious news. And then we're also going to go into some other conversations. I'm getting comments that the audio is off. Let me see if there's something wonky going on. I'm showing microphone is fine. It's connected. I'm seeing good levels there. I'm going to tap the mic. You guys hear that, right? So unfortunately, if you guys are having issues with the audio, the stream, or the sync, I am sending the best that I can send. If you are receiving less than my best, unfortunately, I'm going to say there's likely a problem with Google, or there could also be an issue with Restream. One of the ways to test that is I'm definitely not streaming this on any other platform. Definitely not streaming this on Twitch or on Periscope. And if we see problems on Periscope we don't see problems on Periscope on Twitch because I'm not streaming there, then it's a problem with Restream, not with my stream or with YouTube. I can't really test that because I'm kind of in the middle of doing a live show. So let's get on. Okay, well, I'll have some more housekeeping stuff. There's a lot of things to talk about. I just loaded up the Android P beta on my OnePlus 6. They finally put out a public beta. Essential had it ready to go right at launch, but OnePlus, that's pretty quick. That's going up. Hilariously, in other phone update news, my LG V20 has been getting a whole rash of updates. Still on Android 7.0, but a bunch of updates. So I might actually pull this thing back out of retirement for a little while to talk about that for a bit too. So I want to talk about net neutrality. There's a major story, kind of broke the end of last week. And for once, I get to be happy Juan and not cranky Juan. I'm really excited about this. So there are numerous news outlets covering this. The one that I think is doing a pretty good job. I mean, there are a bunch doing a really great job. I just happened to land on /gear. California approves net neutrality bill considered the strongest in the country. Bill SB 822 not only restores the net neutrality rules that were put into place by former President Barack Obama, but goes even to ban internet service providers from practices like throttling in favor of select content and zero rating services. It happens so rarely. It happens so infrequently. But you know what? I'm actually really, really proud of my state. This SB 822, and we've talked about this bill a couple of times on this podcast. This was a roller coaster ride. This was a rocky walk of political machinations and shenanigans. That was a really hard phrase for my brain to come up with on Labor Day, morning of Labor Day. I am still, locally, I am still having conversations with my friends who are politically motivated. I do feel we should still look at replacing Assemblyman Miguel Santiago. SB 822 came out Assemblyman Weiner drafted this bill and purposely made it a lot harder on ISPs than the FCC's Open Internet Order. The OIO is a decades-long conversation about internet service practices, and I've talked about that quite a bit on this podcast too, especially the more recent developments in net neutrality where ISPs and telecoms say they can't improve their networks without more public funds, but they don't want any of those pesky regulations. The internet is like a utility, according to the telecom lobbyists, but they don't want, and they need more public monies because it's like a utility. The internet is just like electricity and power and water, but they can't have any of those regulations because that would be bad for business. But more public monies, please. So SB 822 gets drafted in San Francisco. It starts making the rounds. New York's variant of their state net neutrality bill is heavily based on the original SB 822, and it is even stricter about zero rating and throttling practices than the OIO was. The OIO actually leaves quite a bit of leeway for some of these obnoxious unlimited plans that we find through services like Verizon, and doesn't do a whole lot to curb things like really aggressive data caps and throttling on landline services, cable and fiber services. So SB 822 was really built to combat some of those more modern ills. Remember, the OIO was built on language from 15 years ago and has been updated and has evolved over time, but our politics still can't keep pace with the rate that technology evolves. So Miguel Santiago gets in there and says, well, if we try and pass SB 822 in its current form, the ISPs are going to sue us. So what we should do is pass a bill that we know we won't get sued over, or we know won't face any kind of scrutiny or any kind of examination or any kind of pushback or blowback from the telecom space. And so he, in a meeting to go over whether or not this was going to be put up for a vote, didn't let the rest of the California Assembly read his revisions, then had them vote on the revisions blind, and then after they voted on the revisions, had a conversation about the revisions, and all of the revisions basically gutted throttling, zero rating, and removed most of the core net neutrality protections. I feel Assemblyman Santiago probably looking out for the wrong individuals. Probably doing a better job of saying, well, we got to make sure the telecoms are happy, is the wrong way to go about politics, especially when you're a Democrat. So Miguel Santiago needs to go still. But I digress. Coming back to the thing that makes me happy, SB 822 got restored. So there was a very loud and public fight here in California about returning the provisions. I think there are still a few things that got whittled from the original intent of SB 822, but what we've got is a state-backed net neutrality bill, which is at least on par, if not a little bit stricter than what the FCC had before the Trump administration put Ajit Pai into the chairman position at the FCC. So now begins a whole nother round of fights. I mean, that's what's so good and bad about politics is this is going to go up to Governor Jerry Brown's desk. It's passed the California Assembly. It's passed the California Senate. It needs to be signed off by our governor. And once it is, I think we're going to see another visceral round of fighting, of pushback from corporate interests. And, I will not be surprised to see an FCC that gets very active in policing state politics. Of really trying to find ways to wedge themselves in on states' rights. And again, from a conservative-backed administration, this is going to be the utmost of hypocrisy, IMO, is when it comes to things like medical stuff and women's health, conservatives can't trip over themselves fast enough to go states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. You can't get in the way of states' rights. If states want to ban something, you can't let them not ban it. But then when it comes to something that would actually benefit most of the population, that a majority of conservatives are actually in favor of, then we're gonna see them go, oh no, you need a federal standard. Hypocrites, 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 hypocrites. But we will have to have that fight. It is actually gonna. I think it's gonna be a really interesting fight, especially because when the FCC gutted net neutrality, they basically said they're going to walk away from regulating this space. So if they walk away, if they are absent their duties in regulating the internet, how do they make an argument that they can regulate states' abilities to regulate the internet, but they're not going to regulate anything to do with the internet? And this brings me to the cranky side of the net neutrality discussion. I was super happy. I was saying like, oh man, just got good news for net neutrality. This is going to be awesome. And then Renato Laporte had to send me this link. I'm actually going to show you his tweet. Renato's a good dude. On the topic of net neutrality, I'm sure this is on your radar, but I still don't have words to describe this. And the link that he sent comes by way, oops, I should scroll back up, of Ars Technica. And the FCC can define markets with only one ISP as competitive. Oh man, see, this is why both parties are not the same, and this is why it still does kind of matter when you're looking at who you're voting for, because I very much agree. Both parties have major problems when it comes to corporate financing, and we should really look at election finance reform. But this doesn't happen under Democrats when we start appointing judges who come to these kinds of conclusions. This is what's very upsetting. An appeals court, this is from the Ars Technica article, an appeals court has upheld a federal communications ruling that broadband markets can be competitive even when there is only one internet provider. This is a quote from the court. The FCC can, quote, rationally choose which evidence to believe among conflicting evidence. We have appeals courts who are now helping us question the fabric of reality. Awesome! So basically, this is like a huge ongoing fight that we've had between rural cable providers, internet providers. This is areas of the country that are still being served by copper that might not even have access to cable, let alone fiber to node. This is a terrible state of affairs for some of the most vulnerable members of our society in the United States. And basically, this appeals court has said, as long as there is another provider within a half mile of a location served, then you have a competitive state. So you live in a small town, maybe there's another provider within a half mile of your town, you run a small business. Well, that's competition. You could just move. For you to compete, to have businesses work with your internet connection, all you need to do is move. So as long as you can move, then you have a competitive infrastructure for broadband. For not even for broadband, for internet access. They are playing fast and loose, even with the phrase, the terminology of broadband. And one of the reasons why the FCC is supporting this is because it's also rolled up in a way to eliminate price caps. So remember, I pointed back to the telecommunications lobbyists have said that the internet is like a utility and they need more public funds to roll out better service, even though they're crazy profitable, and none of those profits ever seem to get rolled back up into infrastructure like they say they will. There's also sort of loosely regulated price caps on what you can do for different types of and tiers of service. And now the FCC wants to get rid of those. So they're not going to improve service until they get more public funds. They're going to charge those customers in rural areas more for internet on copper. I mean, best case scenario, we might be talking about people that only have access to ISDN. And the only illusion of competition is whether or not that person can move to another area that has more competitive service. But again, this is all largely influenced by the corporations involved. So I seriously doubt if you're in an area that's being served by copper internet, then you can't probably find anyone who's going to go above that unless you live near an area that has a community-backed broadband plan. So, like, if you're in Tennessee, you're mostly SOL unless you can move to Chattanooga. If you can move to Chattanooga, if you live in Tennessee, you care about your technology, and you can move to Chattanooga, because then you'd get gigabit up and down for like $70 a month. And it's through the power company, which means that they're not fleecing you, and you're not just going to have sudden rate hikes because it's part of the power company, and it's just a crazy successful rollout. It's been phenomenal. But, of course, Tennessee conservatives stopped it from spreading to other areas of Tennessee because reasons. All right. I'm imagining someone is holding the mic and nodding as one speaks. Martian, at some point, I would like to pick up like a PA or like an assistant, someone to help me out with all of this production. Maybe even a social media manager, because dang, it's rough. From Bearpaw, Chattanooga is still in the forest ages, except for their internet, which crushes 99% of the rest of the United States. There's been a lot of chat in the live chat about different internet speeds and stuff like that. So, from Ronald Collins, laying down utility lines, especially in California, requires an environmental impact study. Well, yeah, I mean, California is all full of really wacky regulations like that, but that's also because we have such a crazy spread and population density, and if you got to play the politics game on that too. Let me get this down here. And let's see. From Samuel Ventimiglia, we only have one ISP here. Ganzi, tech nerd, a mandate bill must be passed for all politicians around the country to go through an annual tech course with stringent assessment exams so that they know better how to pass laws governing tech. Ganzi, I'd actually even just be fine just voting out some of the older members of our politics. I've been very disappointed with some of the local California Democrats. Brad Sherman is another example, someone who's got ties to money coming in from financial institutions. But he's out there, oh no, we can't have crypto. Illegal things happen with crypto. That's bad. So, that's not okay. Let's see. Thing is, laying down utilities and a utility quarter requires that study when one had already been done. Ronald, yeah, I get it. California has some obnoxious issues, but that's not a reason to not do business. This is coming from someone I've got family members who work in the financial industry and in the architectural industry in New York. You can't find markets more influenced than some of those businesses. The thing is, you don't just stop doing that. You still have to compete. And that doesn't really change the situation for getting this work done. I mean, California gets in your way. Everybody knows this. And yet we still have some major issues with that infrastructure, and we still have this ongoing 5-year plan. I've been talking about California's 5-year plan to get fiber out for about 10 years now. In 5 years, we'll have another study done. The California political situation needs to change, and that's why I've been advocating getting rid of guys like Brad Sherman and Miguel Santiago. So I don't know what you want there, but that's the gig. All right, let's move on to a couple other little silly things here. I have to talk about this because I have to talk about this. This was it's not a story. It's not a it's not even really news, and I'm mad that I'm gonna talk about this, but I have to talk about this because it's so ridiculous. So I've kind of cooled off on listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. There was a while there where I was really into every guest that he had on. Right now, it kind of feels like he's sort of cycling through guests to have the same conversations, but they do really well metric-wise. Like, I'm a huge fan of Tom Papa, but we've kind of had the same conversation with Tom Papa about how much young people don't understand things and how baking sourdough bread is really cool. So I've had about 9 hours of that conversation. I don't need another 3. He really likes turning to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not the biggest fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson is very capable in the role that he has as an educator and as a scientist, but I'm also a little over Neil deGrasse Tyson acting like he can just be an authority on everything. You know, so many I am very smart tweets that come from Neil deGrasse Tyson about things that he obviously really doesn't know about, but he's speaking with certainty. And I like my scientists to have that little touch of humility, you know, just being able to say, like, well, I don't know anything about that. Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of those guys who knows everything about everything until you point out that he doesn't know anything about the thing that he says he knows everything about. A perfect example would be when The Force Awakens came out, and Neil deGrasse Tyson couldn't get a tweet out fast enough about how unrealistic BB-8 was. Oh, you can't have a spherical robot out in the sand. That wouldn't work at all. And then ignoring the fact that a lot of BB-8 was actually a practical robot. Like, it was a practical effect that they created. So Neil deGrasse Tyson came back on the Joe Rogan show and had some very tough talk for smartphone owners. Joe points out, like, hey man, you don't have a case on your $1,000 iPhone. What's going on there? And we got a pretty good taste of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about his.
Are you one of those dangerous guys that doesn't put a case in your phone?
So I'm gonna turn this down. I'm gonna turn this up a little. I might get flagged for this, but we're gonna play some of it. Let me guys know if you can hear that.
Is the Stonehenge of Manhattan?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, Manhattan Henge.
That's
I'm sorry.
And you have no case on your phone, so
No.
you're a risk taker.
Right. No. So you can think of it as risk taking, or when I got the phone, because I admire how thin this is.
Right.
I like technology
Yeah.
serving me.
Sleek.
Okay. So what I did when I got the phone, I said, let me do this with it. Okay.
Flip it around.
Yes. And I reminded myself, why do in the military cadets, why do they twirl their gun? Of what possible value is this in combat? Why do they do these things with their gun? And then I realized you're not supposed to drop your gun. Ever. Ever. So if you twirl the gun and you don't drop it, it means stuff can happen to you in combat, and it is always attached to your body. So I said so when I got my phone, I said, let me just do this. Okay, let me just do this. If I pick up the phone and
Dropped it.
okay.
Jesus Christ.
So when you do that, then you never drop your phone.
You never drop your phone. That's all you have to do, guys. So apologies. I know that was probably a little low in terms of volume. I have no way of really telling what's going to happen on the stream, so I don't want to blow out anyone's ears when they go and watch this. But the gist of that is Neil deGrasse Tyson was really examining his behavior, because he's a scientist. He does the science, you see. And he really wants his technology to serve him, and he likes how thin the iPhone is. So he was thinking about, well, soldiers drill with their phones and they flip their phones around. So I've come up with a foolproof way. There's like another 2 minutes of this nonsense from Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about how he never drops his phone now, because when he gets his phone, he flips it around. He gets a feel for it. And that means he's always prepared like a soldier. That's how tough he is. He is very badass when it comes to his phone. So I'd like to play a little thought experiment. Let's be scientists. Everyone in the live chat with me. We're gonna be scientists. So first of all, case study, one individual playing with one phone. If you were watching any part of that video, what did you notice was on the back of Neil's phone? That's right, on the back of Neil's phone. Let me see if I can isolate just one little frame here as he's holding up his iPhone. Right there. Nope. YouTube, come on, I need one frame of this. You can hook me up, one frame, come on. Every time it's like in the preview, I hit the frame and then it's just a fraction off. Okay, that's blurry, but we'll have to do that. As you can see, he's got Starry Night on the back of his iPhone. If he has Starry Night on the back of his iPhone, that's not the stock glass back on the back of the iPhone, I'm pretty sure, which means he's got a skin. So already he is affecting the phone. He doesn't believe in his own hypothesis. He doesn't believe in his own, like, I flip the phone and that means my fingers get used to it and I am confident that I'll never drop it. He's already added more grip to the back of his device. So already I find evidence in Neil deGrasse Tyson's behavior that contradicts his assertion or his hypothesis. Now, engaging in more phone manipulation, I'm sure probably has some kind of dexterity enhancement. But that's not really the argument we're making when it comes to using a smartphone and lifestyle durability and having a glass back device as being a fairly impractical material to make the back of your phone out of. But then also, the training for that dexterity requires you to alter or augment your behavior. So part of his original hypothesis structured on the argument that he likes his tech to work for him and that he likes the sleekness of the iPhone. So the iPhone isn't doing any better job of this. He is altering his behavior and he's having to work harder to alter his behavior to adapt to Apple's design decision. So this notion that he has found a better solution to this doesn't really jive with the argument that he's trying to make. He is spending more time engaging in potentially more risk of dropping his phone by flipping it and twirling it around, and that, again, seems to contradict the main point that he's making with this argument. Then also, it's just this pompousness. I can't handle this certainty because he's super tough. Like a soldier, I drill with my phone. And that's why I don't drop my phone. So I really want to see, I mean, I want to write him a letter and say, like, dude, if you just put like a bumper on there, you could get yourself a fidget spinner and you'd probably be way more chill. You'd probably be a lot happier. So, from Gansey Tech Nerd. Oh no, Juan Bagnell. The grip is just on one side. Let us calculate the slipperiness of the display on one side against the grippiness of the skin on the other side. Science! And Kyle Ruggles, he's also sitting still. Do people use phones when sitting all the time? If he's on a train holding it in one hand, what then? Or holding it high up to get a shot? And from Fabio, a scientist would say, you can't reduce risk to zero. Stop. Because I think, again, what's hilarious is the second he goes about detailing this hypothesis of his that he's got to train, what does Joe Rogan do? He tries one phone flip and he drops the phone. I don't feel like this is a good solution for people out there. I really feel like you should not flip your phone around. I think you should just get a decent little bumper case and add some extra grip. And that's, I think, a better alteration of the device to fit into your lifestyle as opposed to you spending copious amounts of time retraining yourself to adapt to poor design decisions. Again, bumper case, change the phone, not have to spend so much time adapting your behavior, or adapting your behavior a whole bunch and then not having extra grip or extra protection for those times that you're still likely to drop your phone. Say the phone gets a little bit wet or moist. All of that phone flipping isn't going to help you unless you trained with your phone slippery, unless you trained with your phone wet. So, yeah. From Mary P. Juan handled that phone like a ninja. I've spent so much time with the LG G7 that, while you sat at home. No, wait, what is that joke? While you went out and had fun with your friends, I was at home studying the blade, for I am a smartphone ninja. Okay, we're done with that. I'm done with you, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I very much respect your opinions on astrophysics. I think your commentary on science literacy is awesome. I think you should leave smartphoning to the big boys. Okay. Let's get on with this. And get that set to right there. Okay, so IFA. IFA, anyone? Did you see any of the announcements from IFA? This is the Consumer Electronics Show in Germany. It's the corollary. It's Europe's version of a CES. I actually think it's a little bit better than CES, but I saw a lot of people saying that there was that this was kind of a boring show. And I don't know that it was boring, but the consumer shows haven't had the same kind of overall industry excitement over the last several years as they did 15 years ago. A lot of the changes that are coming now are really data and services driven. And so when we see speaker tech, we're not seeing amazing new sounding speakers because we've got really good options from low-end consumer all the way up into high-end audiophile gear. That hasn't really changed. So it's going to feel a little less exciting when company after company after company are showing off how they've built, Amazon or Google, smart services into their TVs and speaker tech. From Aditya Anil, IFA, I know Germans, they love their Wurst and beer. I love my Wurst and beer. Actually, quick tangent, we got some bratwursts. I mean, just Costco bratwursts, they weren't super fancy. Lex loved bratwurst. Just thought that was a fun thing to share. 3-year-old going to town, just eating some bratwurst. Didn't love the sauerkraut as much. Loved the bratwurst, so I was pretty stoked. So I want to start this off. And Aditya Anil and Hadi Tamimi both wanted to kick off with some of the announcements on stuff that was kind of interesting to talk about. These are my top picks from IFA 2018. This is going to take a little while. I actually saw I thought there was some cool stuff to talk about just in the general consumer electronics space, and some phone stuff too. We're gonna load most of this phone ways, but then some other consumer stuff that I thought was cool too. And obviously, I think we need to start this off because I've been talking about audio so much over this last week. The Axon 9. This is the Android Authority coverage. The ZTE Axon 9 Pro announced. It's got the Snapdragon 845, a water-resistant build, and a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. So I was a huge Axon 7 fan. The Axon 9 has a huge iPhone-style unibrow notch. It's got a 6.2-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED screen, so it's 1080p, but it's long because it is a taller display. IP68 water resistance rating, so I think a lot of people will be happy about that. But it gets rid of the headphone jack. So there is that water resistance does not include your ability to plug in a 3.5 millimeter phono jack. So they've got a lot of stuff going on here. Things like interpolating video, so that you can get sort of a software augmented 60 frame per second video play, even when the video doesn't really have 60 FPS, HDR10. And this is going to be kind of cool for a lot of people out there. This is going to be a 12 megapixel main camera, but the secondary camera is going to be an ultra wide, 130 degrees, which takes us back out to like LG V20 territory. So I'll be really curious to see if they've solved any of the barrel distortion problems that LG had. Because I actually really do like the compromise. LG reined in their ultra wide, so it's not as wide. It's still pretty wide, but there's way less distortion on the LG camera. I'll be curious to see if ZTE has figured out a way to do almost fisheye wide, but rectilinear, so that it's not super warped or distorted. 6 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage. Again, that 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And we've got a price tag that brings it in at flagship grade, where it's launching at 649 euro. So, my analysis. I was a huge fan of the Axon 7. I was fairly disappointed in the Axon M. The Axon 7 was an amazing mid-ranger. It might have been the best mid-ranger of its era. It went up against the Honor 8, which was a phenomenal mid-ranger, one of the most attractive phones I think that's ever been built. It's the only phone that it's the phone I've been asked about the most while reviewing phones out in public, and it also went up against the OnePlus 3. Around $400, that was a brutal year for mid-rangers, but the Axon 7 managed incredible performance, was one of the first phones to offer Daydream compatibility, had a great high-resolution display, had some really progressive camera features where you could shoot H.265 video or H.264 video, UHD video at that, and had very good stereo speakers with one of the loudest headphone amps I've ever tested in a phone. Just in terms of amp output, slightly outperforming the LG Quad DAC phones. Just quality is better on the LG, so ultimately I would still give the win to LG, but the amp on the Axon 7 was monstrous. So we get to the Axon 9, and I kind of feel like all of the major differentiators are gone. Design-wise, we've left HTC. So the Axon 7 looked like a classic HTC. It looked like a 1M9 had a baby with... no, it just kind of looked like a 1M9. But, now the Axon 9 looks very much like an iPhone. The same camera positioning, the same unibrow notch cut out in the screen, and it's just going to be a bit bigger. 6.2-inch display at that kind of diagonal doesn't really seem like it's going to be like the kind of super big phablet-y experience. I do like seeing the wide-angle camera, but that's also something LG's been doing for a while, so that's not really a differentiator. The performance on tap, the Qualcomm 845 is going to be a fine chipset. It's a little tough seeing that at the end of the year with an HD screen, it's only a 1080p display at €649. That's really where I'm kind of getting stuck on this price performance commentary, because you can shop pretty savvy, and I'm sure you can find an LG G7 for €649. I'm sure you can find an LG G7 for less than €649, and it will have an amazing speaker, an amazing headphone jack. Probably, my hypothesis is it will be a more refined wide-angle shooter, a way smaller notch with a higher resolution display, and it's also going to have the same water resistance rating and wireless charging. Oh yeah, the Axon 9 also has wireless charging. So that to me is a tough call. I'm a little anxious about ZTE walking into this space when a direct competitor like a G7, for everything that the Axon brand built its rep on, the Axon 7 building its rep on killer audio and good camera features, the Axon 9 taking up to flagship grade pricing territory, and it's essentially an iPhone design clone with some LG inspired features. And I would say the G7 is probably the better buy. From Samuel Ventimiglia, I got the V35 on AT&T for $499 with a promo, and made the jump to LG a lot more palatable. The nitpicker, that's Demir. Hey, Demir, what's up? I'm not impressed by the G7. That's fine, but if you were going spec for spec, I would say that the most direct competitor to an Axon would be the G7, and that makes me really anxious when almost every spec is better on the G7. Now, the Axon experience could blow me away. Maybe they've got an amazing dongle in there that's way better than the Razer headphone dongle. And I can get into more arguments on Reddit about the Axon dongle. I would very much like to be surprised. And I would very much, because of how much I loved the Axon 7, I would love for that. But whether or not you're impressed with the G7, the G7 kind of beats this phone and often can be found for a cheaper price than what this phone is going to launch at the end of 2018. Just as we're getting ready to talk about my next story is Huawei with Kirin 980s and Qualcomm 855s, 860s, whatever they're going to be called, are right around the corner. Do you launch a 650 euro phone at the end of 2018 with specs that don't beat devices that were launched at the first half of 2018? That's a tough commentary. I want ZTE to do better than this. Again, I want that wow factor of picking up an Honor 8, that wow factor of picking up an Axon 7 or a OnePlus 3T. Those phones were so impressive. Now, I know companies can't survive at the razor thin margins that you could launch a $399 Honor 8. But ZTE feels like they've missed a couple steps. In between the OnePlus 3 to now, we're right on the heels of a OnePlus 6T. We've had every single half-year generation of OnePlus to get used to a slightly higher price here, a little bit more money there, a little bit more expensive here, and a little bit bigger hit to the wallet there. ZTE going from the Axon 7 to the Axon 9, it feels like they're just dumping all of those little price increases into one big update, right? So it feels different than what we've gone through with OnePlus. The OnePlus has been a lobster pot effect, right? They've been slowly turning up the heat on us to make the OnePlus 6 a premium product. And then the OnePlus 6T will likely push into even more premium territory if they get a carrier deal. Just then you'll have carrier plans and carrier subsidies that you can work on, or is no interest loan, or however carriers work. From Diana Markova, watching from an Honor 8. Diana, you have excellent taste. I dearly miss my Honor 8. I might pick one up just to have one. But ZTE, I don't think they've earned their place to just allow us to go with that one generation massive jump in pricing. So again, I want to be proven wrong. I want to see ZTE come out with a phone that feels like that high-end premium flagship grade product. But I don't know that it's going to be the Axon 9. I want it to be the Axon 9. I don't know that it will be. Okay, moving right along, and let me get this out of the way here. Okay, so as I just previously mentioned, one of the things that complicates the discussion on a phone like the Axon 9 with a Qualcomm 845 is Huawei taking the wraps off of Kirin 980. The most powerful and intelligent ever. The world's first 7-nanometer mobile AI chipset. So there actually is some really cool stuff going on in here. There is a new, this is an 8-core CPU, but it's structured a little differently, and I think it's worth talking about some of those architectural differences. If you're watching the live stream, I'm just going through the Huawei press release right here. They've got all those like fancy graphics that blur as you scroll. I just think it's kind of neat. I got to drink a little more coffee here. Hold on one second. So, one of the things that I think is really interesting and could be a huge benefit, or could just be one of those things that you have like a marketing bullet point, but it doesn't really materialize as any kind of advancement. This is an Octa-Core processor. Now, usually, in an Octa-Core processor, you have 4 big cores, which are really powerful, heavy lifting cores, and 4 pequeño cores, which really, really low power, but help you do things that don't need a lot of horsepower in that moment, or help you run background services. This has been a pretty common trend in smartphone design for a while now. The Kirin moves us from 4 big, 4 little to 4 big split into 2 dual core segments. I'm going to explain. 2 of the, I'm doing like sign language here. That's bad. 2 of the big cores are clocked higher, and 2 of the big cores are clocked lower, and those 2 dual core segments are separate. So instead of having 2 tiers, a powerful quad core and a low power quad core, we've got a faster, powerful dual core, a slower, powerful dual core, and then a low power quad core. So we now have 3 tiers of performance to rank moving throughout the chipset. This could be a really nice benefit for smartphone users for battery life, in combination with the die shrink. So it's kind of a big deal that the Kirin 980 is going to be a 7 nanometer chipset. It was one of the stories I ended up axing, but another company has walked away from die shrinks. So there are precious few companies that are going to be trying to shrink our electronics smaller and smaller and smaller. And when it comes to CPUs, the smaller you can make that, the less power they need, the cooler they run, the better the battery life, and the faster they get. So it's been kind of a big deal that AMD is going to be showing off 10 nanometer for GPUs and CPUs, probably the beginning or middle of next year. Intel's development on 10 nanometer has kind of stalled. So phone CPUs, they're not quite as complex as desktop CPUs, but it's a really big deal that we made it to 7 nanometers in a phone chipset. And this is coming with an interesting consideration with the division of core power. Again, 2 big fast cores, 2 big slower cores, 4 low power cores. On paper, this should deliver substantial power benefits with a modest improvement to processing power over the Kirin 970. And the Kirin 970 is no slouch. It's still a very competitive chipset today against the Qualcomm 845. So, the only issue is, and this is something that I've started reading up on a little bit more because I'm concerned with my next PC build, how do you get Android software to recognize the power benefits of a 3-tier system when a lot of apps don't really take advantage of a 2-tier system? So an app can go in and the scheduler has to make a decision as to what information goes through what set of cores. When you've got something that spikes on the current model, when you've got something that spikes, all 4 big cores light up. You probably don't need all 4 big cores, but the phone's going to use them because some part of an app said, I need more power, give me more power. And the scheduler goes, cool, here you go. Here's 4 cores. And the app goes, well, I only needed 1, but cool, let's do this. And then your phone is using a lot more power than it really needs to in that moment. Huawei is trying to fix that issue by only having 2 big dual cores. This is so difficult to. I wish I had like a PowerPoint presentation to give you guys. I'm sorry, but now the scheduler has to say, do you need 2 big fast cores? Do you need 2 big slow cores? Or can you get by on the 4 little cores? Anytime we have something that has to route information between different processing units, we do introduce a potential bottleneck. And we could lose processing cycles in the scheduler trying to figure out where information needs to go to get worked on. So I'm cautiously optimistic that Kirin 980 is going to be that TikTok, right? Every Kirin chipset has bested the previous Qualcomm and introduced new features, and it's just nipping at the heels of the Qualcomm which comes after it. So if you had a Kirin 960, then you had Qualcomm 835 powers 6 months before anything had the Qualcomm 835. If you got Kirin 970, you had NPUs and AI processing hardware months before Qualcomm could deliver their version of some kind of assisted core for, phone AI. Kirin 980, you're going to have that die shrink months before Qualcomm is able to release their next generation chipset. But I'm not sure this small, medium, large tier of performance is going to really deliver until we get software that can properly take advantage of all of that. Now, the converse to that, the converse to the converse to the converse, EMUI is pretty smart about handling the performance under the hood. So I'm hoping their improvements to EMUI and Android P in combination will deliver the scheduling and the optimization necessary to take advantage of this 3-tier performance paradigm. So that's definitely something huge to be on the horizon. And let's see. Oh, I've got a ton of comments here from Martian. I need 2 big slow cores. Me too. Who doesn't? From Elias, Qualcomm better watch their ass though. From Renato, good kernel tuning is really important, but underneath kernel is ready for that. This new ARM technology is already 1 year old, and Google made some improvements on Pi. That's where I'm hoping. EMUI does an amazing job of optimizing Kirin hardware to run under Android. I think they've made the best argument for having some kind of aggressive skin, because it's not really the skin. I think EMUI looks terrible, but I like the performance it delivers over time. I do believe that their claims on keeping your phone running snappy are valuable. It's just you have to put up with kind of an aggressive, not super nice looking skin. From Demir, the Kirin is always behind the Snap for real life performance. 970 is less than 835, not even close to the 845. I haven't had the same experiences, but I know that you come to this with a lot of experience too. So I'm not gonna just outright refute you, but it has been for me the consistency where Kirin typically falls apart. I mean, the best example of where Kirin falls apart is actually in my P20 Pro Camera review. If you go to patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, you can see a 20-minute video full of photos and video samples, really detailing the performance on the P20 Pro camera. And this is something that I don't believe the Kirin 980 is going to address, and that's like image processing. Qualcomm, I think, is easily a generation and a half, maybe 2 full generations ahead of Huawei, of HiSilicon for their ISP. ISP in this instance doesn't mean internet service provider. It means how your phone camera processes information and makes the pretty photos and the pretty videos. This is something that I think is going to be concerning on the 980 also, because from everything that I've read, trying to do some deep dives on the spec built into this thing, what they're using for graphics processing and what they're using for image processing will likely still be about a generation behind Qualcomm. It's said, I don't believe we're going to get 4K video at 60 frames per second on the Kirin 980. I don't think the chipset's going to be able to handle that. And then also, to that same topic, I'm very concerned about Huawei's approach to video image stabilization. And that could be something that they improve here. But again, how this chipset looks to be processing information might not be substantially different than how the Kirin 970 is doing that. So in overall phone performance, especially after the GPU turbo update on the Kirin 970, I'm not too concerned about daily performance, real world performance. I've had very positive experiences there. Gaming performance looks like it's going to improve. I don't think it's going to quite catch Qualcomm, but it's going to be better, at least to a point where if we're talking about 5% differences in video game benchmarks, that we should be all right there. But if you're really into content creation and a major aspect of your content creation is video, then Huawei might be behind the 8 ball there, especially once a next gen Qualcomm is out and ready to play with. That might be very dangerous territory for the Kirin 980. So that's where I'm going to be really anxious to test the next Mate. Is the Mate should improve upon what I saw from the P20 Pro, where I had some significant concerns about photo and video performance for the P20 Pro. The Mate should improve on that. But now we've got to test it. Again, it's not enough for me to say it should be better. I want to get the phone in my hands, and I want to run it through 3 or 4 days of shooting aggressive photos and videos. So that's That was a major announcement at IFA, though. 7 nanometer processing process fabrication for a mobile chipset is kind of a big deal, especially against where, like I said, where desktop and workstation advancements have been kind of on hold. Intel has been dropping the ball on their die shrink, and a number of companies have left the race. There are several companies that used to be responsible for fabrication, and they've walked away. So only a couple companies are still working towards making this stuff smaller, and this is kind of huge. So I hope Kirin 980 brings the improvements that they claim it will, and that EMUI can take advantage of this stuff, because then we'll have a good arms race. We don't want one company to just be the winner, because I'd love to see what this means for Samsung. I don't ever get to play with Exynos like I do with, because in the United States, Samsung phones have Qualcomm processors, not Exynos processors. Exynos is Samsung's in-house processor brand. But I want to see what Samsung can do with the die shrink, because the last generation Exynos had some pros and cons that made it a difficult chipset to just talk about. So we might be in the same boat here with the Kirin 980. Like, great improvements over here, but some serious concerns over there. Qualcomm might be the better all-rounder. Like, maybe performance isn't as good in this one area, but across the board, it's a more consistent performer. That's my hypothesis. That's what I think we're in line for. Oh, lots of conversations here. From Smashter, we need a 7 nanometer SoC with a big ass battery, solid state battery technology, and we will have all day long battery life and very fast charging. So one of the things, my brother actually has a new job, and he's doing a lot of like environmental and energy tech work now, and like some really interesting stuff that might be coming down the pipe on like solar panels, for instance. One of the things that we were talking about, and again, it's kind of funny, I made a video like 4 years ago talking about how battery improvements often get swallowed up before we get the benefit of having longer runtime. And as soon as you improve the battery, people don't use their phone the same way that they used to with the less good battery. So let's say you have a Galaxy S7 and I give you a Mate 10 Pro. You've instantly gone from a 3,000 milliamp hour battery to a 4,000 milliamp battery, and you've gotten a more efficient chipset. You will not use the Mate 10 Pro the same way that you were using the Galaxy S7. You will use the Mate 10 Pro more aggressively, and you will do this naturally, and you will do this, without any designs. So that battery improvement will, on day one, you'll be like, wow, my phone lasted so much longer than my old Galaxy S7. And without really thinking about it, you'll just use the Mate 10 Pro more. And then after a year, you'll go, well, now I'm getting the same battery life I got out of my Galaxy S7. But you won't really have seen the process improvement. So that's always what I think is kind of funny, is we've seen from year to year, we do see some pretty awesome battery improvements, but that's linear. Software and processing improvements have been more logarithmic for the last couple of years, like substantial improvements to processing power, graphics power, display technologies, and all of the fun things that go into our phones, while battery improvements have just been plodding along at a more linear improvement, not even curve, like almost a straight line improvement. All right, let's get into some other things here too. If you want to read up more on the Kirin 980, I think one of the better outlets covering it is actually AnandTech. They can be a little inconsistent in some of their like CPU benchmarking when something new is out. Like they might rush an article, but their commentary on the 980, some of the claims being made by HiSilicon, pretty good article to at least get your feet, to get your sea legs in what's going on with Huawei's newest chipset. I would say that out of all of the announcements that I saw over the last couple days coming out of IFA, I think Sony might have walked away with the major commentary win. Not necessarily that Sony had the best products to show off, but that I think they had the most engaged press conversation, because there were a number of Sony devices that came out. I'm going to highlight 3 right now, but there were a number of Sony devices that came out. There was still solid commentary from their camera division, and Sony at least seems to be making some token efforts in improving the look and the consumer side of things like their smartphone business. While I still don't think they've got the perfect recipe for that, they seem to be making an effort to bring their line into the current zeitgeist of smartphone design. Whether or not I enjoy that, I'm still going to be pointing to my Xperia XZ1 Compact as one of the best phones ever made. They had some interesting commentary. So the first thing that I actually want to point out is a watch. So this is, I have a couple articles here from Tech Radar. I liked their coverage throughout IFA. And this is the Sony Fez Watch U. Now, this isn't a smartwatch. This is Sony using their e-paper technology to show off a fashion piece. So you can have this really savvy black and white watch, which the watch band also mimics the design accents of the watch face. And because it's e-paper and it's not a traditional smartwatch, it's not like a Pebble. It's not going to do a whole bunch of like apps and things. It's mostly just for the fashion segment of it, just mostly for the look of it, that you can get weeks of battery life off of this kind of setup. So it's got the Sony label on it, which means it's probably going to be stupid expensive, but it's an interesting commentary on utilizing technology for kind of an old school approach to a wearable accessory. You know, watches are at a glance delivery notification devices. You look at your wrist, you see the time, you get on with your day. There really isn't a better organic interaction for that. But again, because it's a Sony label, I think they said like it's going to be something ridiculous. Like it's going to be, where is it? Oh, here it is. The top version of this is looking like it's going to sell for €700. I don't know that this is €700 good. It's definitely not going to be the heirloom piece that, you know, a more expensive traditional watch might be. But again, what I'm excited about here is Sony turning back to some interesting technologies that I think worked really well on previous devices. I like digital paper, e-ink, e-paper displays. I think that that's a better platform for most watch-style interactions. And I'm less and less impressed by trying to have a smartwatch, which is like a mini phone on my wrist, as much as I like a companion device to my phone, which does all of the heavy computing really well, but then this acts like a gatekeeper, giving me notifications and simple replies, text messages, things like that. If I could have gotten a Pebble with, you know, a little bit more storage so I could use it as a dedicated MP3 player with maybe Bluetooth headphones for when I'm working out, and then an always-on heart rate monitor, I would have had an amazing solution that complemented my phone, was standalone for workouts. It would have been a winning device. So Sony taking this into the fashion segment will hopefully be a proof of concept for other ways that we can do this stuff. I don't think phone screens on your wrist are the best way to keep doing wearable technology. And e-paper, e-ink, whatever technology that's inert, that doesn't need to be refreshed, 100 times a second, is going to be way better for battery life. It's going to be way easier to read in direct sunlight. It's going to be more practical just from a delivery information standpoint. I think this is a win. I think this is a huge win, and I hope that it at least reopens the door to examine other potential solutions for this kind of kit. Because I was very less impressed with the rest of the slate of wearable technology conversation from IFA this year. No major announcements. A lot of Android Wear powered devices coming out with the older Qualcomm chipset when we're pretty confident a new Qualcomm watch processor is likely on the horizon, but we also got news that there's not going to be a Pixel watch with the launch of the Pixel 3. Just this stuff is feeling like it's stuck, like it's plateaued, or that we've hit peak smartwatch and that the only company that can improve upon their design is Apple. And that's terrible. I want to feel like there's still some life in this segment so that we can get some better gear. And if Sony's fashion watch gets us back on that track, then I think we're in for some good stuff. The other Sony accessory that also got huge buzz, and I'm really excited about these. This might be the first Sony headset that I work hard to try and get my hands on to review. This is Sony's actual website here. The WH-1000XM3. This was one of the most commonly cited, like top of the show for IFA announcements. Sony's new Bluetooth headset. They're now saying, people who've had a chance to play with it, because there are some early sort of previews, not full reviews, but this is likely the best competitor out for high-end audio with excellent noise canceling, noise reduction processing. So, I'm a huge advocate for listening safer, for listening healthier when you're listening to your music. And advanced noise reduction technologies are a big step for making sure that you're listening lower and that you're not having to turn up the volume of your music to block out the noise of your environment. And again, after having spent some time with the Audira, which that review, those Bluetooth headphones will also be going up this afternoon, the review for that, I really like some of the things that they're talking about for this kind of tech. Sony, I'm on a slide right now on the Sony website. Noise canceling made to fly. Unique atmospheric pressure optimizing delivers optimal sound at high altitude. This sounds like such a gimmick, but I do like that attention. So when you fly, a lot of people will have issues with things like their ears popping. Whenever you change altitude, you can be driving up a tall hill and you can feel your physiology changes. So having hardware which tries to address that, I think, is a very valuable commentary, because, pressure affects your ears. If you're going to listen to stuff, your ears are kind of vital to listening to stuff. So again, Sony camera tech on point, Sony fashion tech making a play for a fashionable watch, and now Sony audio tech. This feels like a classic Sony move. This feels like the brand that my parents used to adore with Trinitron TVs and Sony stereos, like the gold standard of consumer electronics. Baby steps like this go a long way to reviving the brand's reputation. So I'm super excited. I'm really going to try. I might even just buy a pair of these. I'm talking to Sony PR. They're really wacky. I don't know what type of review stuff that they do for YouTubers at my tier, but this is definitely high on the list. Kyle Ruggles, Trinitron, LOL. So, lastly, because I mostly talk about smartphones, we probably should mention Sony Xperia XZ3. It's a phone. It was probably the top phone talked about at IFA 2018. IFA's not really a major phone launching point. That's MWC. MWC in February is the major phone show. But this is still a time. You've got all the press there. You could launch a phone. So the XZ3 seems to have walked away with kind of the top commentary or the top pick of IFA 2018. And this is Sony trying to address some of the concerns that they've had. I'm right now. I'm scrolling through Android Central's coverage on the XZ3. So these are the photos that they have for the phone, and I will be the first to say I am going to miss the blocky, rectangular, huge forehead and chin bezel stereo speaker design of previous Xperias. I know I am unique in that aspect, and that more people will be excited by Sony finally delivering a glass-on-glass sandwich with a 2:1 aspect ratio screen. But they are going to a 6-inch OLED, so that's kind of cool. This is a metal and glass sort of curvy sandwich, and there is a curve to the display. It does wrap to the corners, so the phone feels thinner. This is traditional Sony, though. So even though this is starting to follow in the footsteps of, say, HTC design, and I'm really happy that they're not highlighting like a massive mono unibrow notch, it is going to be a $900 phone. So $900 phone. This isn't going to have the new camera sensor that they teased. Sony PR still has some issues. So they made a lot of noise. We're coming out with this super high resolution camera sensor. We know there's another phone coming out, but those two really weren't ready to come out at the same time. So it makes it feel like, oh, well, now I can't get this Sony because I want the one with the better camera sensor. But Sony camera sensors on their own phones have always been very competitive. Just I fight the Sony camera app more than I should. So it's going to be a $900 phone. This is Sony's a premium. They always put a premium price tag on their own label. And there already have been some criticisms, like the fingerprint sensor is too low. But I kind of get it. When you look at Sony's design, they are super camera centric. So when you look at, let me see if I can make this. I'm actually showing some photos here, so apologies to you listening on the audio version of this podcast. They're super camera centric, right? They make almost all of the camera sensors that go into phones. So the Xperia still looks like it's going to have a dedicated camera shutter button when we look at the bottom corner of the device. But I don't think this is the most graceful solution, but I like that this is an attention. They paid attention to this detail. The camera sensor is mounted a little low, but they didn't put the fingerprint sensor right next to the camera sensor. And I do believe that this is in an effort to make sure that when you're trying to unlock the phone, you don't accidentally smudge your camera. Sony is a major camera brand, and I think this is an interesting an interesting solution to trying to rectify this problem. You know, we had the opposite problem with Samsung last year, where their fingerprint sensors were positioned in a way where you were almost guaranteed to wipe your finger against the phone camera sensor for the first month that you had that phone. So this Sony solution here is interesting. That is compelling. I just don't know that it's as well executed as it could be. I know there's a lot of stuff going on a phone. I'm not going to be the guy who says, well, they could have just moved it up. They might not have been able to move their camera sensor with all the other stuff that's going on in their phone. But it would have been nice if the camera were mounted a little bit higher and then the fingerprint sensor was mounted just a little bit more north of the center of the phone. Because I don't know, you know, like if I'm using a OnePlus 6 as a guide. Having the fingerprint sensor up here, as I cradle the phone in the pad of my hand, and I've got almost peak of the bell curve average sized hands, even though I joke about them being really, really small, my finger naturally lands right about there. In fact, the phone just buzzed. And right now, Google Assistant is trying to do something. If I moved the fingerprint sensor below the OnePlus logo, I have to bend my finger in to get the fingerprint sensor. That is a very nitpicky first world problem, but this is a $900 phone. So I feel criticisms like that matter when we're talking about $900, $1,000, $1,200 phones, right? This isn't, oh, you know, I can kind of live with like a $500 phone that has a few design quirks. This is a top tier premium price product. It deserves that level of scrutiny. From Cheryl, personally for me, Sony peaked in design with the Z5. I would agree, but again, I keep coming back to the XZ1 Compact. I love that little phone. The XZ1 Compact is such a little Mighty Mouse. It is just a baller little phone. From Goran Petrovic, fingerprint sensor under this display in the lowest third is the most natural place. Finally, something proper on 2019 phones. I'll be curious to see how the next generation, so if we could just make the entire bottom third of a smartphone a fingerprint sensor, that would be awesome. I would definitely be on board. From Fat Produce, also, who wants DualShock Rumble on your phone? Well, according to LG, you want major vibration out of your phone. So Sony should totally get on doing a DualShock phone. I love it. I love it. So from Cheryl, want true, but then you are now more conscious of how you unlock. You will not inadvertently swipe the camera lens. Yeah, I kind of, like if you're talking about the Sony, I think that's definitely what they were going for. But it's also just not as natural. You know, again, there's something about some of the most beautifully, perfectly placed. I said the hilariousness of running a ton of updates on my V20 and just how perfect my finger lines up with holding the phone exactly where my finger needs to land on the power button on the V20, and it's nowhere near smudging my cameras, right? So I don't like technology that makes me think about what I'm doing to do something basic like turn the screen on, right? It's why I really don't like face unlock. It's in most cases, as I'm walking around through my day or doing something on my phone, it's a deliberate action to get the phone to look at my face to unlock it before I can do something with it. Whereas on this generation of phones, like the V20, the phone was unlocked and on before I ever took it out of my pocket, right? The phone wasn't even anywhere near my face, and by the time it was up at my face, I had a little vibration pulse saying, hey dude, we're unlocked. And I was instantly into using the phone and operating it. So that to me, this goes back to the discussion about Neil deGrasse Tyson, is how much are we managing our phones, or how much do our phones really take the load off of these little daily interactions? And right now, I think we're heading in a design direction that actually makes us think about using our phones more. We have to be more careful using our phones, or we have to spend more money to change our phones so they're more lifestyle durable. Or you have to spend all your time doing cool phone flip tricks so you can be like a ninja with your phone. I think we're kind of getting away. I think we're losing the plot. Face unlock is cool. It's really cool from a technology standpoint, but it doesn't really improve the situation for most consumers, and it's a more deliberate action than a fingerprint unlock is. So that's where I get a little cranky about this stuff. Shorts are incredibly long. I went down another tangent. Sony. I think Sony walked away with some of the top commentary from IFA this year. Some of the most positive, finally addressing some of their phone situation that people have been criticizing Sony for a while now, and some really exciting developments in the consumer electronic space in general, which is, again, the highlight of IFA is it's an overall consumer electronics show. I would be remiss if I didn't point out a trend which I think might be a little concerning. Here, let me get this out of the way here. This is, again, from Tech Radar. 2 stories coming up. Samsung is delivering a QLED, a QLED 8K TV. So, you know, a lot of you are saying, oh, most people don't even have 4K. Well, now we can make that jump to 4 times the resolution of UHD. So that's going to be awesome, right, guys? We're all really excited about that. And at the same time, LG with the world's first 8K OLED. So we're going to have the same debate over OLED versus QLED. And we're just going to have that debate at 4 times the resolution. So that was everything you guys wanted, right? I mean, that's like the next major step in TV technologies, yeah? Just gotta find content that's now 4 times the resolution of UHD. You maybe Marquez will start putting out the raw video from all of his red shoots so that you can watch it on your 8K TV. Isn't that going to be exciting? Anyone? My boy, who watches 8K content anyways? From Marty White? Oh yeah, so much 8K content? Anyone? No? I think we should move on. From Renato Laporte, we need a 16K micro LED. From my boy, TV tech should focus more on power efficiency. Bills do matter. No, I agree. I don't know what's going to be the next exciting development in TV. I think we're rapidly approaching. Because again, it's not that I have a problem with the resolution. It's that I really feel like we haven't done a good job of educating consumers to some of the benefits of higher resolution displays. Excuse me, while also getting more of that content out into people's hands. I still regularly have conversations with people who don't see any benefit to 4K video, UHD video, and that's very disappointing. We're talking about, and these are often in discussions when we're talking about very expensive phones. I can totally understand the commentary on UHD video when we're talking about people who are shooting in less than ideal network conditions. Like, you want to share a video and you live in a part of the world which is maybe just emerging into LTE, right? Your data rates are probably ridiculously high and expensive. Your transfer speeds are probably really low, and storage, local storage, is probably still a premium that's difficult to pay for. So 4K video doesn't make a lot of sense. 1080p might even be kind of a deal breaker for some of the stuff you're shooting. I get that. But I'm very disappointed in the number of geeks talking about flagship tier products and then still saying, yeah, but I mean, like, 1080p is still perfectly fine. 1080p is even better because I don't even have a 4K TV. And it really feels like I should be mocking that harder. It feels like a comment like that, someone who's talking about, like an iPhone 10 or a Note 9, but like, but 1080p, yeah, brah. Like, I should be making fun of them in the same way that I make fun of people who say, oh, the human eye, I mean, that's cinematic. Movies are only 24 frames per second. You can't even see 60 frames per second. The human brain can't even see it. Like, I should be making fun of you in the same way. Scientifically, there is still a noticeable benefit to shooting 4K video, even if you're only going to watch it on 1080p displays. You should read up on how subpixels work for video. You get a truer version of the color information in your video when you shoot 4K and you downsample it to 1080p, and you get the benefit of actually having that resolution for whenever you do move up to a quad HD or a UHD display. If you have the storage space and you live in a first world country and you have LTE and all this other stuff, you should shoot UHD. You absolutely should. It's better. And also, I mean, from Kyle Ruggles' point, think towards the future, record the highest quality possible. There's also the argument, how valuable are your memories to you? I believe the OneDrive folder that we use to share photos and videos of Lex with our family and friends, we don't post a lot of public photos of Lex. I think there are currently 7 or 8 photos of Lex that are public, and I think you can only see her face in 3 or 4 of them. Marie and I made a decision that we weren't going to publicly broadcast Lex's childhood on the internet because our childhoods weren't publicly broadcasted for imaginary internet points. And when she's old enough to contribute her opinion to whether or not she wants to be included in our public digital life, then we'll have a conversation about that. But that doesn't mean that we haven't been shooting copious amounts of photos and videos of our daughter. We're proud parents, but we only share them in a private folder with our family and friends. It's not even on Facebook. It's a locked down cloud storage folder. So I believe that folder has just hit 100 gig. There's 100 gigabytes of photo and video samples of our daughter that people can consume. All of the video is 4K video. I'm not going to mess around with my daughter. These are videos that I would like to look back on someday and still see reasonably decent quality for a future where maybe I'm looking at like ocular implants. So, Goran Petrovic, great upscaling is the most important aspect of these new TVs. Definitely a selling point there. But again, native content is always going to look better than upscaled content. And one of the arguments that is actually a benefit here when we're talking about 8K TVs, thank you, Goran, that reminded me. One of the major benefits is we're talking about humongous TVs to start. Just like with 4K, they started out big compared to high-end HD TVs when we made the jump to UHD. And then we started, like getting panel manufacturing down into lower cost segments, into smaller segments, et cetera, et cetera. If you wanted to do a home theater, an 8K TV makes a lot of sense. You're starting to run into the competition between doing an 88-inch TV, right? A wall screen, well, you could do that with a projector and a movie screen, or you could do that with a TV. That makes a lot of sense. So when you have a humongous display, if we had 8K content for it, you would probably be sitting at a distance where that resolution would have a positive impact on your viewing experience. Right now, our UHD TV is right at that limit where when I watch 4K content, it does look sharper than when I watch 1080p content. But we're right at that level where we're probably not getting the best bang for buck out of owning a 4K TV. It's just that I can kind of feel it when we only see 1080p. And that's where a lot of 4K stuff is. Like, you fire up 4K for the first time and you're like, this doesn't look that much better than my 1080p content. But you get used to it. And then when you go back to 1080p, your 1080p definitely doesn't look as good. It definitely doesn't look as nice. So, So that's kind of where we're at. Like, there are some use cases here. Makes a lot of sense to me. But again, now we have to work on infrastructure and distribution. And do we have a market? Do we have the ability to do 8K transfers of movie content? I mean, we definitely do it with film, but 8K movie content. And how do we distribute that? Is that going to be a disc? Is that going to be a download service? Is that going to be a streaming service? Are you going to stream high bit rate 8K content? Probably not. So that's a major aspect. Again, the chicken and the egg, the arms race between getting content for a new display tech or buying the new display tech. If people don't buy 8K TVs, then studios and developers aren't going to put out 8K content. But if there's no 8K content, then people aren't going to buy 8K TVs. Same thing burned 3D, but 3D was less good, was less of a consumer benefit than going to a higher resolution. So, yeah, that was another talking point. Someone else mentioned too, like Sharp is coming out. FE1538C. There we go. Sharp's 70-inch 8K TV is shipping this month for €11,200. And that sounds about right. New display tech, 4 times the resolution. It's brand new. You're going to pay that new premium. And yeah, then that's what we're going to do. From Raphael, get Pied Piper on it. We need middle out compression. Come on. And then some other discussions going on talking about RAW and other things too. From my boy, 4K porn plus 4K TV. Yeah, the porn industry will help lead the way on 8K content. I'm sure porn actresses and porn models want even higher resolution examinations of their most sensitive bits for the scrutiny of people on the internet. I'm sure they're real excited about that. And from Ellis to you, what we need is micro LED TVs. Hopefully we switch from OLED. I want to see. This is one area where Apple might actually make me eat my words, and I hope they do, but they've been investing a lot in micro LED too. Micro LED could be a very exciting tech for next-gen displays, so I hope we see some commentary on it. But it's one of those things that's kind of been like graphene. Not as bad as graphene, but kind of like graphene where, oh, micro LED, it's amazing. You might see micro LED in the next 5 years. And then, that was a story that was posted 10 years ago. Not that bad, but you know what I mean. Let me get this out of the way here. One last story that I am... one last announcement from IFA. I almost said CES. I'm going to drink some coffee here real quick. I am not caffeinated enough for Labor Day. Okay. one last major announcement from IFA, and then I kind of want to wrap up some viewer questions, and then anything you guys want to talk about for the last 10, maybe 15 minutes that we've got on this stream. I have to admit to you guys something, that for a lot of my consumer electronics coverage, I am kind of a brand whore for one specific manufacturer. My all-time favorite studio-grade microphone comes from AKG. But when it comes to things like headphones and monitors and the rest of the recording infrastructure, I don't know that I could be more up Sennheiser's butt if I tried. That label is one of those labels that really lights me up. For as excited as I am about Sony coming out with some baller consumer headphones, there were a number of Sennheiser announcements that I am silly excited about. They have a new gaming headset coming out, which looks ridiculous. But this is the one that is making me potentially very excited for Sennheiser doing more consumer electronics-y stuff. And that's from Kyle Ruggles. One and Sennheiser sitting in a tree. No, okay. This is the Momentum True Wireless. Now, I adored the over-the-ear Sennheiser Momentum. I now think they're called the HDs, but the Momentum headphones, gorgeous design. I loved their sound signature, and good options for things like active noise reduction. This is Sennheiser's first true in-ear, absolutely wireless earbud. So this joins, what Samsung is doing, what Apple is failing at with the AirPods, and then also a couple other companies that do this well that I'm now... Jabra. The Jabra Elites are very good. But if there's one company that's going to make me... Oh, man, the privacy cookie information is blocking all of this. Guys, I'm going to consent because it's Sennheiser and I love them, but I shouldn't have consented to that. So this is the Momentum True Wireless, individual earbuds in a crazy cute little carrying case that I'm sure probably has a battery or something like that. And so Sennheiser's audio technology. This is the company I most want to see joining the consumer space for high-end, consumer-grade audio equipment. So all kinds of different connectors and 7mm drivers and multicolored LED indicators. Are we going to get RGB on earbuds? Sigh. And then gold-plated connectors, metallic spin ring, microphone holes for picking for voice pickup and for transparent hearing so that you can hear the world around you. I mean, again, these are all features that have come out on other competing devices. This isn't like Sennheiser's completely radically blowing the doors off of this kind of tech. But again, also joining this too, which I think is going to be kind of interesting, is having a specific app on your phone that helps relay all of this info to you too. So their technical data is a little Bluetooth 5.0. A2DP, AVRCP, HSP, HFP. But what's gonna be troubling for me is on their supported profiles, I don't see LDAC, but I do see aptX, aptXLL, and AAC. So we should still get some really good compression tech for Bluetooth audio. 4 hours of A2DP listening time, 12 hours with the on-the-go charging case. Not bad. And then I'll also be curious to see if these are going to be more like quality earbuds or if they'll be rugged enough for people to work out with. Because that's the one thing that the Jabras do really well, is they're kind of designed for marathon runners. And you sweat a lot when you run a marathon, and the earbuds should handle your biology, because the human body is super gross. You should be able to handle sweating, soaking, stuff like that. So in-ear, really interesting step. And again, they're not Bluetooth 4.2, they're Bluetooth 5. So I am majorly Twitter-pated about. I haven't been the biggest fan. I think the Jabras have been the ones that I point to the most, and in terms of having individual, truly wireless earbuds. But now Sennheiser joining the conversation just makes me interested in general. So I'm going to be really curious to see there. Now, again, I hope that we see good app support for Android, that it's not just an iOS app. Their Ambio line are really cool, but they only support iOS. No, do they support Android now? I can't remember. Anyway, I really want to see them. I want to see Sennheiser in the consumer space. I really wish Sennheiser would come out with a headphone DAC. You know, even if it weren't just a dongle, if it were like a proper headphone DAC that drove Sennheiser headphones properly on your phone, they're the company that I would really want to see that happen on. But that to me was like the last major announcement out of IFA 2018 that really lit me up. So I'm going to get into some viewer questions, some viewer comments, but just as a general, what other things did you see at IFA 2018 that made you kind of excited? I want to focus on the cool stuff. I don't want to just slam companies that maybe announced things that look silly or annoying. And if there was anything wacky that was at IFA, drop me a comment in the live chat. We'll try and catch up with all this stuff too. But I just had to share with you. Again, I always think it's important that a tech reviewer is upfront about their biases. So, you know, like The Verge obviously loves everything that Apple does. If there's one company that I verge out on, it would be Sennheiser. So that's the gig. I want to get to this. I got where'd it go? There we go. So this was a comment that I got on Patreon, again from Renato Laporte, and something that I think is a very sensitive topic to discuss, because we've been talking about things like right to repair, right? So this is from Renato Laporte, the state of software support. This is a slightly longer message. I'm going to try and chew through this here real quick. Past week, I came across a rather disturbing news. Google is ending the support of the original Chromebook Pixel, that ridiculously overpriced Chrome OS laptop, which was launched in 2013. This is 5 years after launch. This is 1.5 years shorter than the standard Chrome OS support period. And this comes 1 year after the bomb that Microsoft would not be supporting some Clover Trail CPUs on newer versions of Windows 10. Those computers will only get security updates until Windows 8.1 lifecycle comes to an end in 2023. Or worse, if they're on Windows 10, because Windows 10 releases have a much shorter lifecycle. Is this heading the way mobile OSs are going? Desktop OSs until now were known for long update support and long compatibility with older hardware. This is all going under with those newer developments. I'm able to run Windows 10 on 9-year-old hardware, and can say I installed an SSD from the start. I had 8 gigabytes of RAM already, and the PC runs smooth AF. All this can go to trash if we let companies turn desktop OSs into reasons to force obsolescence through software, even though the hardware has enough capabilities. He goes on to talk about some other examples, Sony and some of the issues updating their phones to Nougat because of the Snapdragon 800 or the 801. And this is a problem we are about to see explode with the rise of connected and IoT devices. I just remembered the Note 9 keynote when Samsung announced a close partnership with Spotify, while my 2015 Samsung Smart TV dropped support for Spotify a year ago, with Spotify claiming security issues in the software that Samsung won't be patching. So, I went back to this, and Renato, thank you so much for that comment on the Patreon. You guys can check it out. I mean, he's also linked it on his own Twitter too. I kind of came back to this a little while ago when I did my look back at the Note 4 camera. I spent some time shooting with my Note 4 alongside the P20 Pro, and how much just the general improvements that we've seen from the Note 4 to today haven't really been that revolutionary. We've been seeing consistent iterative improvements. Everything is better. But the Note 4 hardware today would still be competitive against a lot of mid-ranger phones that are out on the market. Not only competitive, would probably still best a number of mid-ranger phones out on the market if the Note 4 were still receiving tailored, optimized software improvements. And I think this is what, Renato, what you're getting at here for a topic like this is we've gotten acclimated in the PC space to software that we can continue to run for as long as we deem we want to. I mean, there are government installations that I used to work with that are probably still running Windows 2000 because they can. Not doing it securely, your government tax dollars at work, but still running it, right? And we expect a pretty long trail back to hardware. So Windows 10 being able to run Windows 10 on aged systems. Like I've got a really old Lenovo laptop that we threw an SSD into, and it still runs pretty smooth. The battery's dying like crazy. But just as like, you plug it in and you have it as your kitchen counter computer or your dining room computer, works really well. And it runs Windows 10 really well. And so we've come to expect that. I agree with Renato. I think the next phase of consumer pressure is going to come from the next phase of operating systems blurring the line between mobile computing and desktop computing, right? Windows being run on ARM is going to make Windows more of a mobile operating system, and a lot of the improvements and a lot of the UI and a lot of the quality of life updates are going to be going towards that mixed mode kind of usage. For a lot of people that complain about Windows 8, I feel like we're going to see a return to some of those criticisms over the next couple of years with Microsoft. Is that not as much attention is going to be paid to that desktop space, and everyone's going to be making sort of a mobility argument with Windows and what Windows should be able to do. And the flip side of that is the continued struggles that Google has had over reining in the various flavors of Android to try and create a Google-approved Android, which has also gotten them in trouble with the EU from a regulatory standpoint, and not really knowing what to do to bridge the gap between Chrome OS and Android OS, where we'll likely see some kind of Project Fuchsia come out, where it's hopefully the best aspects of a desktop-grade browser with the app compatibility and flexibility of Android, but way more locked down, right? Anyone who believes Fuchsia is going to be another big open source initiative from Android, I think they're going to be very disappointed. I think what we're going to end up with is a more iOS flavor, but something that's a bit more flexible between a desktop style computing environment and a mobile computing environment. And I think that's what we're going to see them mash up there. And then Apple is also just sort of a wild card at this point. Their strategy for OS X versus, for Mac OS versus iOS is just totally up in the air, and I have no idea what they're going to try and do or how they're going to accomplish some of their changes. But it really does seem that Apple is way more interested in pushing iOS as the overall platform when you look at things like iPad Pros, right? You call something the iPad Pro, and developers have started delivering great apps to really get a pretty high level of work done. But you're not going to convince someone who's working in a TV studio that they should replace all their Mac Pros with iPad Pros. Like, that's not going to happen. So this is, I think, going to be the next major consumer pain point. And it's going to sneak up on us, and it's going to be very subtle. And then we're all going to realize one day that everything we use is glued shut and doesn't really get updates. And if you want software features, well, it takes a couple years. And these companies are going to crack down harder and harder on the tiny and diminishing community of people who like to do things like unlock bootloaders and flash custom ROMs. So that's gonna be, I think, the play. And I don't know if you folks agree with me there or if you disagree with me there. Those are the kinds of conversations I really feel like we should be having more of now. We have a lot of mega corporations at the top. Apple is on this list too, where they engage in some fairly anti-consumer practices to prevent you from repairing their devices or seeking out repairs from non-Apple approved institutions where you might not have access to an Apple approved institution. Renata Laporte, what's a computer? Oh, worst commercial Apple's ever put out.
From Martian Yadav. Dear Apple, from my boy, MacBook Pro 2018 strains just by turning it on. Oh, that's hilarious. So I've got some real concerns. This is all. I mean, again, I've got major concerns just for myself because there are certain things that I really like. You know, there are things that I like to be able to do. I like being able to build my own workstations. I like being able to tinker on my phones. I don't do as much flashing and rooting and ROMing and unlocking as I used to, but there are some things there that I still find valuable in that commentary, and why I get cranky, like when Huawei makes updating their phones a little bit more difficult, or they backtrack from some of the enthusiast goodwill that they had when they were putting out, helping that community unlock bootloaders and flash ROMs and stuff like that. I'm raising a daughter who's pretty mechanically savvy. I come from a proud family of scientists and teachers and engineers. And my daughter seems to exhibit some of those traits. She's a wacky performer and dancer, so she definitely has some of her dad's genetics influencing her situation, but she's very adept and very mechanically oriented and pretty incredible dexterity for a 2.5-year-old, almost 3-year-old. And I want her to grow up with some of the same shared experiences that I had with my dad, where opening up the family computer, which was an 8088 running DOS, wasn't a scary mystery. You know, it wasn't a black box that we weren't allowed to touch. Something went wrong. We had to resolder some connectors and capacitors on the board, and we did. We closed it all back up, and it booted up, and we had a computer again. It was the same thing, you know, like the first time my dad did a brake job on what was it? It was a 1986 Toyota Camry. And, you know, I was there to help and learn, but basically I was there to hold the flashlight. But taught me not to be afraid of cracking open a system to see how it works and disassembling that system and then reassembling that system, and it works better. You know, I would be terrified of doing a brake job on my new Nissan just because of all of the sensors and cables and computers and electronics that happen in there. That makes the car safer to drive, but it means that I am now detached from the overall ownership of that vehicle. I can show my daughter like my monster workstation / gaming rig and rip it open and pull parts out and replace a motherboard and show her all that. But the computing devices that she's most apt to use in her daily life will be completely glued shut, to the point where even if she damages a part of it, she will likely not be able to fix something or to replace something. You know, you bust a screen, oh, just get a new one. And that makes me sad. And that makes me really, really sad. So that's the last little bit of cranky one from Farid. Is she cranky? Actually, she's cranky right now because it's Labor Day and her preschool is closed, and she wanted to play with me in the office, and you know, while I was doing this live stream. So, yeah. From Ronald Collins, hey Juan, your brake pads on your new Nissan is real easy to do. Brake pads are easy to do, but I used to do full brake line from soup to nuts. Bleeding the brake system is kind of a pain with the electronics on the ABS system on the newer Nissans. It's not impossible. You can do it, but it's not as easy as just the old mechanical pneumatic systems. And then there are, because it's got the radar-assisted cruise control, there are a couple wonky little sensors. So when I pull off the rotors and I do a full, when I go and get them turned, I don't turn my own rotors. I don't have the machinery for that. But when you go through that whole system, it's just a little more concerning than it used to be, like when I had an old Honda or an old Toyota, and you know, like I could do that in a couple hours on, you know, in a driveway with a socket set. It's a little bit more, and because it's like, you know, my daughter's going to be in this car and my wife's going to be in this car and I still have a warranty on this car, I'm just going to leave it alone. I know I could, but it's more intimidating and it makes me more anxious than if I had like a 10-year-old car, which I was responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep myself. That'd be fine. Whatever. Let me just pop the engine out and replace a couple idler pulleys and retime the whole thing so that it runs a little richer. Fine, I can do that. Brakes on a new Nissan, just enough to give me a little bit of pause. From Ronald Collins, you just squeeze the pistons on the caliper. You don't bleed the fluid. Oh, the fluid needs to be bled, dude. Because it also just needs the entire system needs to be wiped out and replaced. We'll save car talk for another podcast. I mean, I already do the book review club. Maybe I should be getting into some more like engine rebuild tech because I haven't done anything like that in a really long time. So I want to scroll back up through after just those last two pieces. I saw that there were a couple other comments and stuff and a couple other questions, but unfortunately this live chat is way too hard to scroll back up through to catch some of this stuff. So apologies that I saw some great questions, but I might not be able to get back to them all. From Ronald Sims, ironically, I am looking forward to the Axon 9 Pro despite it having a Me Too design. From Ronald, I'm really, again, the Axon 7 earned ZTE so much cred that I want to play with their next products, but this does give me some concern what kind of commentary they're trying to have here. If it's a premium mid-ranger, if it's a higher end flagship tier product, it's just, I think they've got some uphill climbing to do, and I worry that this design might have been intended for the very, very beginning of 2018, but then they went through all of their political shenanigans, and now they're going to be stuck in kind of an off-cycle holding pattern. From Fat Produce, what about the weird smartwatch that looks straight out of 2013? You'll have to remind me. There were a lot of disappointing smartwatch announcements at IFA this year. But again, this is one of those things where I'm gonna wait. I'm really not rushing to get into any new smartwatches until I see what Qualcomm has to offer for their new chipset. There's rumors we're going to see a better processing unit for next generation smartwatches. A lot of people making fun of me for my love of Sennheiser. Rightfully so. I am way too into Sennheiser. You should definitely make fun of me for that. And there's some other wacky conversations about ear health. Apparently some people need to clean their ears better. So yeah, neat. Let's get this out of here. Okay, so from LS2, hope SomeGadgetGuy gets his hand on the red smartphone. I really want to play with one. That's not going to be right away. I still haven't gotten my hands on the Note 9. That's probably going to be in the next couple weeks that I will be jumping into some Note 9 coverage. And again, mostly focused on the camera and audio tech. So that'll be on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, where it's going to join my LG camera and audio reviews, P20 Pro, BlackBerry Key 2, OnePlus 6. All of those are going to start lining up more and more and more. I'm going to put up a poll on Patreon. I might not do it today. I think I'm going to try and put it up tomorrow, just for the patrons on that site, of where I should be focusing my end of the year commentary. I really feel like I should talk about a Pixel. I really feel like I should talk about an iPhone, and I really feel like I should talk about a Mate 20. But Samsung coverage is going to come a little late, and a lot of those phones I'll probably have to buy out of pocket. So I've been saving up the money that the Patreon has been earning so that I can pick up probably 2 of those 3 phones. So that's why I've been I'm not rushing to try and get a Poco phone because I'm going to have to import it. It's a really exciting phone to talk about at a really, really low price point, but I feel like the commentary on that can be exhausted very, very quickly. And there are some things that are going to be very important to the discussion, not only of just the phones themselves, but of software. An iPhone is going to be necessary to talk about the next generation of iOS software, right? Any new apps that come out, any new services that come out, I do need to have an iPhone in-house. So I think whatever the next iPhone is, I should probably grab the smaller version or the medium-sized version or whatever. But then where does that leave me for, should I be doing Android coverage on a Note, on a Pixel, on a Mate? And there are going to be a lot of pros and cons to that discussion. So I'm going to put that up for the patrons to help guide what the end of the year strategy is for this channel. So I really hope that, you know, people will join that conversation. This is also coming from just how valuable that commentary has been for me. Last week, I put up a question on Patreon about videos that are for patrons only, and about whether or not we should leave ads enabled for higher resolution playback. And the discussion was phenomenal. Like, I got so much insight and so many great tips and so many encouraging words that really does mean to me that that group of people is becoming its own little community. And I really, really appreciate that. So it's been a great resource for me in improving the quality of my content and improving the quality of my discussion. So if you would like to join that, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. And again, it's been absolutely wonderful having people really contribute to the production process. This has been way more collaborative than any other tech blog that I've worked at. That means a lot to me, where I've left several other outlets that had teams of people and zero collaboration. And I set up a Patreon, and I instantly have dozens of people that not only feel like they can contribute to just supporting production on my channel, but literally contribute to the style of editorial and the quality of the content in the videos and the strategies for that channel moving forward. I've gotten way more insight in a couple months on Patreon than I have for years on other platforms. So I can't thank you guys enough. Anyway, that'll be up on Patreon. And then lastly, just be on the lookout, because, you know, again, I do my Monday morning tech show, but later this afternoon, I will be posting public. I think I have seen that this didn't get demonetized again, so I'm very happy about that. Thank you, Google, for not demonetizing a headphone review. I appreciate it. But this is the Audira A01. This is a very interesting idea for launching a new audio brand. Here, let me go. I use a part of their Kickstarter teaser here. So this is the doctor that created the company, and he wanted to build a hearing test into a pair of headphones. You guys know I am really into digital health and making sure that we're using our consumer electronics in the healthiest ways possible. Where I've interviewed psychiatrists and audiologists, and the Audira fit into that discussion really, really well. So they're a very expensive pair of Bluetooth headphones, but they've got an interesting hook. Launching a new audio brand in 2018, that's a very tough call, and I think they've got at least they have an interesting thing to talk about for your premium headphone purchase. So that'll be out this afternoon. Or if you're listening to this podcast later, it's already out. Go to youtube.com/Juan Bagnell and you can watch the my review of the Audira A01 Bluetooth headphones. Okay. So, from my boy, instead of buying phones, I should just buy all of the latest Sennheiser products. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the money that you guys have helped me raise on Patreon, and I'm going to go and buy some $2,000 Sennheiser cans just for me. I would advocate a violent revolt if I did anything like that. Oh, some people are saying, like, if I'm dissing Jaime. No. My problem, some from Tiva Tech, dissing Jaime Rivera. Jaime's my boy. Jaime is one of the most seasoned voices in tech commentary, and I think he still puts out the highest quality daily tech news show. There are people with much better funding and much better resources putting out daily tech that pale in comparison to what Jaime does every single flipping day. But because of that, platforms like Pocket Now were not collaborative. My issue wasn't with Jaime. My issue was Jaime never got the support he needed at my tenure at Pocket Now, and I think that this is changing now that I've left. Thankfully, now that I've left, it seems like their resources are being divvied up more appropriately. But it was very difficult to get Jaime on the Pocket Now Weekly or to do a back and forth video. Like, we did a couple debate videos. It was really challenging to do that because he was working like crazy. So what was one of the troubling aspects of working at Pocket Now was I was a solo YouTube practitioner, and I was making rent off of my own YouTube channels, off of my own YouTube videos at a time where I think I only had 20 or 30,000 subscribers. This was before the adpocalypse. When I joined Pocket Now, after chatting with dudes like Michael Fisher, the whole reason why I wanted to join Pocket Now was for better resources and more people to work with, so I wasn't just working by myself all the time. I wanted collaboration. But when I got there, what I found was just a bunch of individual people working under their own umbrella, and Jaime's editorial schedule was insane. It was crazy. He was still doing a ton of reviews and a daily news show. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's way too much. He didn't have an editor. He didn't have a social media manager. He didn't have a writer or a producer. That was all in-house. Jaime is my boy. He is a badass mofo. Seriously, with all love and respect. That guy gets stuff done. But that's not what I wanted. Well, no, I wanted getting stuff done. What I wanted was to get stuff done with Jaime. But I didn't want to just be his editor. So that's the gig. When I talk about, and this wasn't unique to Pocket Now, I've written and produced for other tech outlets too. I've written and produced for news outlets, local news. The reason why I love working with Fox, I don't really get paid much of anything, much at all, well at all, to go and do TV segments on Fox LA. But I have a team there. You know, like I'm not responsible for rolling carts around, setting up camera shots and you know, fulfilling all of like the blog posts and stuff. I show up and I get to be the tech expert and talk about stuff. And I have a producer who works with me to make sure everything runs smoothly. I'm not a one-stop shop. That's worth it for me. Ditto Newegg. Newegg, I don't set up all the cameras and push record on my live stream and write a script for me and Trisha and do everything. There's an amazing group of Newegg ninjas that work every week to make sure we've got a good show to put out. That is collaboration. So when I do stuff on my own channel, obviously I've got to be a one-stop shop. But you know, even on my own channel now, I've got the Patreon community, the little group of patrons on Patreon. That is the dumbest thing I think I've ever said. The little group of patrons on Patreon. I just became a Dr. Seuss novel. They are actually contributing and giving suggestions and helping with amazing pieces of advice in a way that I couldn't even get from a proper tech blog in improving the quality of my content. And then I get to work with guys like TK Bay. So like the whole smartphone challenge we did is going to be 6 videos in total, between kicking off the challenge, doing some long form podcast discussions and some wrap ups. My last video on the LG G7 will be out in a couple days. Where TK and I put that all together on our own. We didn't put that under XDA. We didn't put that under Pocket Now. We didn't put that under any other major tech blog. We just did it for ourselves. That's collaboration. That's being able to work with someone and being able to produce with someone. And that's what I want. And that's what I wasn't getting by actually being on the payroll of a standalone or of a proper tech outlet. I don't want to be just, you know, shooting all by myself. I would go nuts if it was just me in the Gadget Lab 24/7, 365 with no other human interaction. And that's what it's like when you have to produce a crazy editorial schedule for another tech outlet. So, from Aditya Anil, so much Rivera in one video. We love you, Jaime. Jaime's a badass. No, seriously, much love and respect. Jaime gets stuff done. And the same thing with Jules. Jules was a great producer for getting that show, the Pocket Now Weekly, up and running every week. And I'm really happy that Josh is over there now. Josh Vergara is a great host for Pocket Now to pick up to keep that show running. But I don't want to be just the talking head in another video, or I want to be just the editor for someone else's video. I want real collaboration. And unfortunately, it seemed like I needed to go out on my own to do that. So again, always challenge, evolution, change over time, and hopefully improving over time. But I am really excited about the fact that I've got a community of people that seem to want me to succeed. So we'll keep doing that, and we'll see how long that runs. I think that's probably the best point that we could end this on. The Audira A01 review coming out this afternoon. I'm going to be talking Sound Blaster Creative X, badass little gaming audio breakout box. This is awesome. It's more portable than it looks, and it's got a monster amp with some really cool tricks for your games. Some LG G7 commentary. I'm going to be putting out another video on the OnePlus 6T. Based on your replies to the video I put out last week. So if you, in my audience, were to make a OnePlus 6T, this is what it would look like based on your recommendations for the things that you care about most. So that's going to be on the horizon soon too. And then I think I'm going to do a couple little follow-up videos also. Android P, it just finished loading on my OnePlus 6. This is super awkward because I'm holding coffee. But yeah, so I finally have the little pill at the bottom. And I don't know that I love gestures. I don't know that I love the gestures in Android P. But we can talk about Android P's preview on the OnePlus 6. And there are going to be a number of other really fun things coming out on the channel too. So I hope you'll stick around, and I hope you'll join me for some more pleasant tech discussion. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week for the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday weekend here in the United States. If you're not in the United States, I hope you are getting your tech week started off right. That you're going to have a lot of fun with your gadgets and your gizmos and your consumer electronics. You know where I'm going to be every week on this podcast, right here, talking about the news stories which may have fallen through the cracks, something that we want to examine a little bit more. Next week, I'll be back to probably being even crankier and even more political about tech and politics, because I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of stuff happening this week in the afterglow of IFA. And be on the lookout, Newegg this Thursday. We're going to do a super long show for Newegg now. It's Intel Gamer Days. And right now, our plan is to do, I think it's going to end up being a 5-hour broadcast. So if you want all of the tech news, all of the tech deals, all of the really hot gaming stuffs, then be on the lookout for a monster live stream coming out of Newegg Studios this Thursday. It's a lot of stuff. I'm a little anxious. I've got a script that's super long and a lot of talking points that I need to go over. So my Labor Day is going to be filled with a lot of laboring. All right, dude. Right, dudes, dudettes, and everyone else joining for some fun tech chat. Thank you so much for joining. You know where you can find me around the rest of the internets. I'm at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Patreons, joining a really awesome, loving tech community right there. And I will catch you on the next Monday Morning Tech Chat show. Be well, have fun, have a great tech week, and I will see you again soon.